Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak-to-Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
Welcome back to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. I'm Art DeVitalis.
And I'm Cynthia Davis. Today, we talked to Nederland Mayor Kristopher Larsen and the new District Judge for Jefferson and Gilpin County, Jason Carrithers. We also spoke to Captain Eric Abramson with the Nederland Fire Protection District for a reminder on the dangers of carbon monoxide.
You'll hear from Dawn Baumhover of the Nederland Community Center, Chris Current from the Nederland Food Pantry, and Nicole Cavalino with the Nederland Area Seniors Center. The three have teamed up to obtain a grant that will benefit area nonprofits.
Music correspondent Dango Rose interviews Rob Gordon of the What Are Records label in the ins and outs of artist and repertoire in the music industry.
For our lead story this week, we spoke with the newly appointed District Judge.
Good morning. I'm Jason Carrithers. I am a newly appointed judge in the 1st Judicial District, which encompasses both Gilpin and Jefferson counties.
Is this your first time in this role?
It is my first time as a district court judge. I've had the privilege to serve the 1st Judicial District for the past 9 years as a district court magistrate. There's lots of legal distinctions, but essentially a magistrate's a junior judge. A magistrate serves at the will of the chief judge, where a district court judge serves at the will of the people, in other words, the voters of the state of Colorado.
Gotcha, all right. Would that be criminal cases as well?
Sure. As a district court judge or in the 1st Judicial District, we oversee all types of cases, everything from family law cases, commonly divorces or child protection, to criminal cases, any case that would be entitled to a jury, and civil cases over certain dollar amounts.
So we talked about his background in the area and why he's honored to represent the district.
I'm prohibited by the rules to talk about any specific case. I did grow up in Gilpin County, and I am a product of Nederland schools. I went to Nederland Elementary, Nederland Middle School, and Nederland High School. Graduated in 1996. I'm proud to be part of the judicial district that encompasses where I grew up, and many of my friends from childhood still live up there, and so it's an honor to serve them.
Taking that tack, what are some of your favorite memories of growing up in the area?
If you think Nederland's a small town now, it was even smaller then, and I remember very vividly the Halloween festivals through the elementary school. I remember sports in middle school and high school. Some of the memories I have playing basketball, although not playing very well, are some of the fondest memories I have of high school, and my teammates and my friends during that period of time are people I still remember, even though we certainly drifted away. One of the challenges in staying in touch is today's modern world does social media, and I've made the choice not to be on social media years and years ago, and so I do still remember all of them and think of them. Again, Art, it is an honor to be in this role, but for me especially, it's an honor to be part of the community that I grew up in. Nederland itself is in Boulder County, the 20th Judicial District, but Gilpin County and Nederland, especially when you cross that boundary to go to the schools, it very much blurs together, and all of the people up there are very close. I remember working at the Mountain Burger when it was not inside BNF. I remember working at the old Marvin's Gardens. My family owned a TV repair shop up there for a while, and I worked at BNF Superfoods, which is still there, and I was just there this past couple of months. And so I do have fond memories of growing up there, proud of moving beyond Nederland and Gilpin counties and gain to serve our people of not only those districts but the state of Colorado. So it is a privilege, and I'm honored to be part of that.
Thanks, Judge Carrithers, and best wishes moving forward serving both Gilpin and Jefferson counties. Brightwood Music in Nederland has instruments of all kinds in stock. The store is conveniently located at 20 East Lakeview Drive, Suite 109. When you buy an instrument from Brightwood, it comes complete with setup by a professional staff member. They also offer repair on all any stringed fretless or fretted instruments.
Your newest music maker is waiting to be picked up. The store is open weekly Wednesday through Sunday, so stop, try something out, and stay and play a while. If you're more comfortable with a private socially distant appointment, just call 303-258-8863 or visit at Brightwood Music on Facebook for daily deals and updates.
For our second story, we talked to Nederland Mayor Kristopher Larsen about a few updates with the Nederland Board of Trustees.
My name is Kristopher Larsen, and I am the mayor of Nederland, Colorado.
How long have you been mayor there?
Oh, I'm coming up on 5 years this April. So I'm in the middle of my third term as mayor, third two-year term as mayor.
What are some of the things that you've seen kind of change or happen under your time with the city there?
We're seeing a lot of the impact of the fact that Nederland is only, 20 miles from Boulder. Just in the 5 years as mayor, let alone the 10 years before that I've been involved in town board of trustees or the planning commission or the Parks and Rec board, all the things I've been involved in, we've seen the cost of living here just go through the roof. I mean, this isn't unique to Ned. This is what every Front Range city is seeing right now. Is just the house prices are becoming rapidly unaffordable for almost everybody. The sort of changing nature of the types of people who are buying houses up here.
So, what has the Board of Trustees focused on most during 2020?
Could you give us an update of what's happening at Town Hall?
We're excited. We've made it through 2020 one way or another. And so it's exciting to be starting a new year here in 2021. Obviously, the number one thing we're still focused on as a town board of trustees, as the Town Hall, is the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We've been really fortunate up here in Nederland. We've kept our caseload very low. People have been taking it incredibly seriously. Mad props goes out to the business community for taking it seriously, for all of our residents, for the volunteers that came out as soon as this started happening, since we started hearing about it almost a year ago now, to support one another, to build the infrastructure, the volunteer networks, so that people could stay home if they needed to, so that we could isolate when we had to and keep all of us healthy. So that's really still where we're focused. The vaccine has arrived, slowly rolling out, and so a lot of the work we've been doing is with Boulder County Health to try and determine when those vaccines are going to be available to Nedheads, to us up here. If hopefully, we're still working on this. We're hoping that we'll be able to do a vaccination station or actually vaccinate people here in town, maybe at the community center or somewhere else in town. We're still working on that with Boulder County, and as soon as we hear anything like that on that, we're going to be letting everybody know. But we're excited now. Some of our more vulnerable residents, those over 70, can go to Boulder and get vaccinated, which is a huge step forward. But we're not out of this yet. Obviously, our businesses are coming into one of the hardest times now. In the middle of winter, we can't really do outdoor seating anymore. Well, we can, but you got to be pretty hardy, which is fortunate for us, but not so much with the tourists who come up here. As of today, the county and the state, we've moved back to level orange. So restaurants, breweries, coffee shops, they can now seat up to 25% in capacity inside, and I know I talked to some of them this weekend, and they were really looking forward to that because it's hard right now. So that's really where our big focus is right now, is continuing to support the businesses, try to do as much as we can to lobby the federal government for more funding. We got the CARES Act funding out at the end of last year. The checks were cut to all the businesses who applied, as well as we had our second tranche of funding from the DEA to help local businesses. So that's the number one thing right now. I mean, probably not a big surprise. That's the number one thing for every municipality in the country right now, is just trying to get our residents and our businesses through this period all healthy so that, hopefully by this summer, things can really start to loosen up. We can get back to Nederland's own peculiar sense of normal.
Is there anything big coming up in the foreseeable future this year that y'all will be tackling?
Despite COVID, the work of the town continues. Really excited. This new board, it's been interesting. We have a lot of new members on the Board of Trustees, and we haven't been able to meet in person yet. So we've been doing everything via Zoom, email, telephone calls, and we've really, just really impressed at how we've come together as a Board of Trustees to work on the projects ahead of us in the town and to really try and continue to build the Nederland we know we all want. And a big piece of that was the passage of our 2020 budget just at the end of last year. Again, that budget book will be available. Our town accountant is working madly to get that ready for the state deadline at the end of the month. But I think one of the really big things that I'd love people to realize that is the town is in incredibly good shape right now financially. We have really healthy fund balances, both in the general fund, the water fund, the sewer fund, our streets fund. We have managed to really work over the last few years to build those reserves up because of the fear of something like the COVID pandemic. We knew there were going to be emergencies coming up in Nederland's future. We saw it with the floods in 2013 and how it impacted Lions. And so starting at that point, we've been really careful with our budgeting and now are in a place where the town has hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in reserve to get us through these kinds of crises. And it also opens up opportunities for grants, things with matching grants so that we can actually use those reserves and double or triple our purchasing power through state and federal grants. And we've got a couple big projects going on right now, or starting once we enter into construction season. The TIP project, the Transportation Improvement Program project, which is reworking Jefferson Street and the Visitor Center parking lot, connecting that whole downtown area to the RTD Park and Ride with new sidewalks, new paving, new infrastructure, new electric car charging stations that we applied for and got from Excel Energy. So that whole area is going to get rebuilt here in the spring with new infrastructure and really clean up one of those areas that we hear a lot of complaints from residents about just over the state of that pavement. So that's kind of an exciting one. And we also got another big grant from the Safer Main Streets program, which is again going to just work on the walkability around town, improving the non-motorized transportation options, making it safer to walk on the sidewalks, safer to get across peak to peak and across the roads. So those are a couple really big projects that are coming up that people will actually see work on the ground, actually see new pavement going in, see new infrastructure. And we've got other ones that are big projects for the town and big projects and important things that aren't quite as obvious. And one of the great ones that, again, came out of that budget season and our 2020 budget is, for the first time in over a decade at least, our police department has a brand new vehicle. Our police chief and our officers did an incredible job of researching and finding a really affordable bargain police vehicle, getting it outfitted at a discount rate, and now we have a brand new police vehicle on the road instead of the ones we've had in the past, which have 250,000 miles on them that we're constantly having maintenance issues with, constantly working on. We were able to retire 2 of the cars that were trading off because they were on the shop so much for one brand new vehicle. And so that's exciting to be able to bring that to our police department. They do so much up here beyond policing. They're such an asset to the community, and now they have a vehicle that can really help them get around and serve everyone.
And here he explains some of the goals of the board this year.
One other project I really wanted to highlight, and this is another one of those ones that people won't see on the ground yet, but is really critical to the next few years of Nederland, is the work we've been doing on emergency management. We have a very good relationship between the town and the Boulder County Office of Emergency Management, and we've been working with them on various hazard mitigation plans. We saw it just this year, 2020, with the fire season north of us and west of us and west of us, south of us, all around us really, with the incredible largest wildfires in Colorado history. And we are starting to plan for, okay, we got lucky this year. The fire stayed just north of us. We got lucky in 2016 when Cold Springs was jumped on top of and tamped down very quickly after only 700 acres. What happens next? And so we're working with Boulder County OEM to work on our hazard mitigation plans. And this is a really collaborative effort that goes beyond just Boulder County. This is working with the National Forest Service, with the watershed protection groups, with fire departments up and down the peak-to-peak region to try and do a holistic approach on this hazard mitigation. And a big piece of that is one of those projects that's been around Nederland for as long as I've been involved. We're finally getting some progress made is the Big Springs egress. And this is a conversations I've had with other mayors in Colorado. It's one of those common situations for small mountain towns where we have a neighborhood with hundreds of homes, but there's only one egress point, one entry and exit point. It's something that mayors all over the state are worrying about because we see what happened in California with some of these fast-moving wildfires that didn't give time to evacuate. We see what happened with Estes Park and the traffic trying to get people out of town. And so we've been working very closely with our state and county partners and really been led by our fire chief, Rick Durr's efforts to design a Big Springs egress route for emergency use only that is avoiding the critical ecological regions of Big Springs. I know there's been a lot of concern in the past over some of the early plans, but it's being redesigned to avoid the wetlands, avoid the old growth trees, and provide that escape egress opportunity for the future when that fire shows up, because it is not a case of if the fire comes to Nederland, it's a matter of when. And so it's really incumbent on the town to be working on the egress routes, and it's incumbent upon all of us who live in town to be doing all we can on our properties. Working with the Wildfire Partners Group is a really good one out of Boulder. My wife and I met with them a couple months ago before the snowfall fell to design an entire plan what we need to do to mitigate our house and prepare to be as defensible as possible. And it's something we need everyone else in town to be doing as well, so that when the fires do come, our first responders, our fire department, has a chance to save as much as possible and make sure that everyone gets out safely.
Well, as much time as you can buy there, that kind of situation definitely helps.
Yeah, exactly. It's everything from the materials on the side of your house to making sure you got that 30-foot fire break, keeping your wood pile away from your house, keeping the grasses down. It's a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of effort, but yeah, it's critical and important to be doing. I want to really just thank everyone in Nederland for how seriously they've been taking COVID-19, for how seriously they take wildfire risk, for how we've come together as a community. Everything from just the residents who are helping out their neighbors to the business community to our incredible town staff who a lot of time people don't get to really see what they're doing. But the number of additional meetings they've taken on with the state health department, the county health department, with business community again, everything from everyone at town hall to our public works who, despite the fact that they don't get to stay home, they don't get to work from home like a lot of us during this kind of crisis, but they're out there every day working, making sure that the water and sewer plants can continue to function. And we have gotten through this so smoothly, with one of the lowest caseloads in the county, if not the lowest in the county. And it really just goes out to what an incredible community Nederland is, and makes me really proud when I'm going to these meetings and meeting with other mayors and, the governor and our congressmen, and being able to talk about the work Nederland's been doing, the incredible community we have up here. And everyone up here deserves my sincere thanks for that. And I just can't wait for when we get past COVID and we can safely get back together again, throwing, one of the biggest parties Nederland's ever seen. I want to have a huge street party where we can all come back out together and celebrate having gotten through this and really thank everybody face to face for that.
Thanks, Mayor, and we look forward to future developments even in the midst of getting through COVID-19.
And now we'll turn things over to music correspondent Dango Rose for an interview with Rob Gordon, formerly of EMI, This is part 1 of the interview, with part 2 to be featured next week.
Here we go.
Dango.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast. Everybody's listening. I'm here with Rob Gordon.
Hello.
What Are Records. Well, we're in the United Interest Studios, but also the building as well. You have a storied history here in Boulder, here in Colorado, and also in the music industry in general. When was it that you actually moved to Colorado?
I moved to Colorado in 1994.
And that was from New York City, was it?
From New York City, yeah.
Right on. What were you doing in New York?
I started in the record industry in New York. I worked for EMI Records in New York. And in 1986, I started working with them. Worked with bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Queensryche and some other cool acts out there. And then in 1991, I started my own record company in New York City.
So yeah, EMI is one of the big dogs of that era.
It
and,
is.
What did you do out there with him?
I was an A&R representative, director of A&R there.
You know, I think A&R sort of gets a little bit nebulous in people's minds. Like, what is A&R?
It's
Especially
a really
in the
good
80s
question.
and 90s.
A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire. And what that means is from the old days of Elvis and Sinatra, that the A&R guy discovered the artist and then found their repertoire, which meant that Elvis didn't write his own songs, so the A&R guy would discover the singer and go find the songs for the singer to sing. And that was all the A&R guy's responsibility. In addition, people like George Martin, who was an A&R guy who discovered the Beatles, was also their producer. So an A&R guy in the 80s, more bands came with their own repertoire at that point. They wrote their own songs. So the A&R guy still was a talent scout, found the talent, signed the artist to the record company, and then was responsible for any or none of the following. Because it really just depended on what the artist would need and what the A&R guy would do. So they could help find a producer, they could help pick the songs, they could work very closely with the band creatively, or none of that. They could just let them go make an album. They are technically responsible for overseeing the money being spent in the contract and helping with the contract process. And then once the album is made, helping oversee the making of the artwork and the marketing plans and getting involved as the champion for the artist within the record company to help be kind of the inside manager, artist manager for the band to help cheer on the band within the company. Because at that time, most major labels had between 100 and 200 album releases per year, and 99+% of those albums failed to succeed.
Wow. Okay, that's the most in-depth definition I've got of A&R in all my experience. And you're a very creative man, coming from a musician's background, also a songwriter in your own right, and being able to be in the studio as a producer, as a mix engineer. So you have all those skills sort of built into your repertoire. What was A&R like for you with bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Queensryche during that time?
Being a musician before I got into the record company was almost the original plan, to be a musician. My father didn't like that idea. So that was the end of that. Studied biomedical engineering in college, and then the next idea become a producer and engineer, because that really seemed to marry my musician side and my engineering side, what I had studied in college, and also what I had done through college. Anytime I wasn't doing engineering studies, I was playing in a band, doing concerts committee, or doing theater. And so going to New York City, I decided to be a recording engineer and producer, and by accident, I ended up sitting next to the guy who became my first boss at a concert. And that's a long and interesting story that if we have time, some other time, I can tell. But I ended up being an unpaid intern for him that summer before I graduated. And that's when I discovered what A&R was. I had no idea what A&R was. It was a complete accident to fall into it. So what it became for me was this very ideal outlet for my combination of passions and talents. As an A&R person, because of that very flexible job description, it gave room for me to become more involved as there was a reason to become more involved. And the Chili Peppers and Queensryche really offer two different levels of how I was involved. with Queensryche, their producer was really on top of things. He needed a little bit of help with studio selection, which he asked me to help him with, which is not typically an A&R role. That's typically a producer role. But I was happy to do it because I love studios, and I was studying up on all the worldwide studios at the time. And then also negotiating all of the deals with the studios, which also is a producer role traditionally. So with Queensryche, I was really involved on the financial level. I had a budget, and then I worked up the budget and negotiated the prices and helped the producer stay focused solely on his music. I did find early on that was a talent that I was going to use a lot. So I ended up doing that for quite a lot of albums, if not most of them from that point on.
Writing, you have a great mind for accounting and all that as well, huh?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate talent.
The balance of the hemispheres, as it were.
And I'm good with spreadsheets, so that made doing album budgets very easy. So with Queensryche, it was really, creatively, I had no creative input into the albums I worked on. I worked on their two biggest albums, Operation Mindcrime and Empire. And then after the album was done, we had an unusual, and this applied to both Queensryche and the Chili Peppers and some other acts. We had a wonderful group of junior executives, of young executives at the company who did nothing but work. We just loved being there and working. So I called it the midnight crew. We'd do our day jobs. The company had jobs they wanted us to do. We did that during the day. And then we'd had our night job, which was staying in the same office doing the work we wanted to do, which was working on the bands that we cared about. So at that point, I assembled this group of people within the company and created a little company within the company.
Oh, wow.
That worked at night times to break Queensryche and the Chili Peppers. Both of them were acts who had been signed to the company before I worked there. And both were languishing, not doing very well. And they were kind of just kept around, but not really taken seriously. And we wanted to change that. So with Queensryche, I got really involved with the fan club, which happened to be run by the guitarist's mother of the band. And they had 10,000 fan club members. So we did creative marketing. We came up with marketing campaigns and flyering campaigns and just some interesting ways of helping the band succeed. So with Queensryche, I was really involved with the marketing. I got involved with videos to a degree. I had a fantastic video production person at the company, but worked with him on treatments and ideas. And so with the Chili Peppers, it was more of it's a little challenging to tell the story because I don't want to talk about too many personal things. What's well known is the original guitarist for the band, one of the original guitarists for the band, Hillel Slovak, died of a heroin overdose. I started working with the band right before that happened. And the producer had already been chosen for this follow-up album by the time I was on Mother's Milk, which is the album I made with them. And that producer did a wonderful job. He has done amazing other work. And in that particular case, the relationship was a bit stressed and strained because there were heroin addicts in the band on the album before. And on this new album, they were clean. But there was some challenges there. And then the producer had some weird situations with recording studios and what he did and didn't like, and we would negotiate deals, and then he wouldn't like the studio, and we'd have to get refunds. It's a little challenging there. So I had to step in at a certain point and mix the album without the producer. We rejected the mixes that he presented, and I auditioned another person who ended up becoming Jane's Addiction's producer.
Oh, right on.
And I worked with him directly to define how I wanted to hear the album, how I wanted Mother's Milk to sound.
Yeah, these are albums that define sort of like my childhood, moving into my adolescent years. Is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And you had more of a creative hand then in the Chili Peppers, and then more personal relationships, it sounds like.
I had personal relationships with both bands. I had a very nice relationship with Queensryche. They were extremely sweet and just really nice to me.
What about the guitar player's mother?
Great, Martha Wilton.
That's
Love her.
wonderful. That's so sweet.
She was wonderful to work with, and just the whole team. They're these nice guys from Seattle. You think heavy metal bands at that time. The attitude, but very smart, really kind, easy to work with, hard workers, all of that. Great management.
It's really cool too to think of a heavy metal guitar player's mom, sending out the postcards at that time.
And running a fan club of 10,000 kids who were really into the band.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
And with the Chili Peppers, I worked with them to edit the songs. We edited a bunch of the songs and then mixed them. Again, worked on the marketing side of things and the video side of things.
That was the late 80s, early 90s, and then you came to Boulder.
I bought a loft in Tribeca in 1991, and I didn't know I was going to start a record company at the time. And then I started the record company and used my loft as my record company, and then kind of outgrew that with 12 people in that office.
Were you sleeping in there too?
Yeah, it was my home. My home. I knew it was time to leave when I had too many people in the main living room space, and one of them had to move into my bedroom, so I had to get up at a certain hours so that he could actually do his job. Otherwise, he couldn't do his job.
It sounds like a very New York-style situation.
Very New York. Everybody had a few big desks, a bunch of computers in the early 90s that people really weren't using databases back then, so we were really aggressively technology forward. And then came here and brought 12 people to Colorado with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what was the sort of theory or why was your record label different? And did you start the management company at that time as well?
I started the management company in 94, but unofficially, for Lisa Loeb, who I managed when Stay was the #1 single. The record company idea was basically to take what I learned at EMI and try to improve some of the ideas. I always thought, and I always talked with many friends in the music industry at the time, like, if we could do this differently, what would we do? And for years, I spent talking to all these different friends about this idea. And so one of those was to sign very few acts and work. Don't just work for a month or two on a record, but work on that act, not work on the album. And so we signed the Samples, who were a Colorado band, Boulder-based band. They had a record deal on Arista. Their manager at the time had become a friend through another friend, and I had helped him with their deal on Arista, just giving him advice of how to communicate with the record company and things like that. And then he brought me the band after that deal had ended, and I did a bunch of research and decided that it was a good fit, a good band to start the company with. I was going to sign more acts, but not aggressively, but we spent over a year before another band even came on my radar that I wanted to sign. There were other bands that came on the radar, but we worked that band. The manager, I had him come and work out of our office. We had a map that we put out back then, an actual map on the floor, and we put push pins in it, and we routed the tour together. Me and the marketing guy at my company, and we routed the tour together. Worked very closely at creating a long-term success. And I did a bunch of different things at the record company that were different, like underselling instead of overselling, working directly with anyone who would buy directly, which ended up being about half of America at the time, which was very surprising for a brand new label. We actually did get paid because they wanted more records.
Thanks, Robin Dango, and we can't wait for part 2. And now for a quick message from the Nederland Community Library. Staff members are inviting community members to celebrate 10 years at their current location.
People are encouraged to drop by January 30th, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. to pick up a goodie bag and a book, all delivered in a COVID-safe way, to say a special thanks for all of the support for the library over the past 20 years. And be sure to share a smile under your mask.
Boulder Canyon Drive will have one-lane closures for the next several nights as Zach Dirt completes a night blasting project. Thank you, Zach Dirt, for keeping us safe and completing this monumental project for local residents of the Peak to Peak region. Moving on to Blackhawk arrest reports for December 2020.
On December 6, 2020, Blackhawk officers responded to the Lodge Casino on the report of a patron intentionally coughing and spitting on a waitress after he was asked to pull his mask up. He was issued a summons and a report was taken.
On December 7th, 2020, a Black Hawk officer attempted to perform a traffic stop and the party eluded him, refusing to stop.
On December 10th, 2020, a Black Hawk officer observed a white Ford Explorer that was said to have eluded another officer. The vehicle was parked on level 3 of the aisle parking garage. One subject was arrested.
On December 11th, 2020, a Black Hawk sergeant responded to the Lodge Casino on the report of an animal problem. 2 cats had been abandoned and were later taken to the animal shelter.
On December 12th, 2020, Black Hawk officers responded to the Monarch Casino Hotel on the report of a male party causing a disturbance. Upon arrival, officers were advised by the party causing a disturbance that he had a Rolex watch stolen the night before and was demanding a free hotel room from the staff. A report was taken.
On December 19th, 2020, Black Hawk officers responded to the Lodge Casino on the report of a male party making threats to staff. The male party was later found trying to start a fight with another patron in the KMM garage. He fought with officers, causing light injuries. The suspect was taken to Gilpin County Jail on multiple charges.
On December 28, 2020, Black Hawk police were dispatched to the Ameristar Hotel on a report of a physical disturbance between a male and a female. An investigation revealed the female was the primary aggressor and was arrested for domestic violence harassment and transported to the Gilpin County Jail.
On December 31st, 2020, Black Hawk officers responded to the Isle Casino on a report of a counterfeit $50 bill. The suspect was contacted and did not know where she received the money from. We spoke to the 3 key members of a collaboration to benefit local nonprofits, and here's what they had to say.
I'm Dawn Baumhover, Nederland Community Center manager.
I'm Chris Current, the Executive Director of the Nederland Food Pantry.
I'm Nicole Cavalino, the Executive Director of the Nederland Area Seniors, also known as Mountain Peak Life.
So this is Dawn, and I was looking for a grant actually just for the community center since we'd lost our earned income revenue stream. And I noticed that there was another grant that became available at the beginning of December. Saw that for the first time they were offering collaborative grants. I immediately thought of the Nederland Area Seniors and the Nederland Food Pantry, since we all work together in the Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services Alliance, and their needs, since they have been feeding so many people continually since March, since the start of the pandemic. So I contacted Chris and Nicole, asked if they would be willing to collaborate on this grant. We went ahead for it and wrote it and were awarded.
So since these 3 are working together, this grant money will actually benefit multiple groups of people across the area.
While the pantry is currently serving 160 to 180 households every week. So this will help us buy food. We are able to receive food from Community Food Share because we are a partner agency with Community Food Share, but there are limits on what we can get. There are availability issues on the amount of meat and produce that's available. So we are purchasing to supplement to make sure that everything is equitable for all households.
As Chris feeds families, she feeds the general public. So she can feed families, older adults, children, families. Our food program is specifically for older adults that are 65 and older and living in the mountain region. So we serve on an average month anywhere between 60 individuals to we have reached the numbers of over 125 in our high peak COVID months. We see a response a lot for our older adults. We're trying to keep them home and fed at home, so they don't have to take that extra risk to go to the grocery store. Our volunteers deliver the meals to them. Our kitchen staff and our administrative staff, we're pretty small staff, but this funding will actually really help to support our staffing costs and our additional costs for food so we can actually order food, make the food in our kitchen, and deliver nutritious, well-balanced meals to our older adults. So this funding should actually help us significantly continue serving through COVID, as we're suggesting all of our older adults stay home.
And for my part, this is Dawn, my concern with this grant was to make sure that the community center continues to be well-staffed, maintained, and operational because we house these essential human services providers. In order to do that, they operate out of the community center. Community center needs to stay operational so we can support those who are serving all these people in our community.
So is there anything that you think we missed?
Well, we really didn't talk about how we collaborate. There's quite a bit of that going on. If Nicole runs short of a product, there are times that I have it and I can fill in her blank. When COVID testing became available at the community center, we all used our networks and social media accounts to promote the testing. We have flyered in our boxes. Nicole has flyered in meals that she delivers. We are just trying to share across all our agencies as much information about support during this COVID time as we can.
When we have the desk staff, I receive emails, people reaching out, asking questions. And we all communicate on a regular basis through email, phone, or in person. We get requests for needs, and we each know who to contact. That's a really important piece. And that even goes beyond our three agencies to Boulder County AAA, to EPA, to Teens Inc. We have a very large net through the Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services Alliance in which we all participate.
And we're all pretty much here at the community center. So that's why this collaboration really came in. So this is with the Peak to Peak Alliance. We actually have so many different resources that we can tap into. So I think as we see how we can use this money together to help our community, we're probably going to be able to grow further and bring it more into the Peak to Peak Health and Human Alliance group itself.
And for those in need, here's how to reach out to each of these organizations.
So this is Nicole from Nederland Area Seniors. Our website is mountainpeaklife.org. mountainpeaklife.org, and our main phone number is 303-258-0799, and you can find all our other contact information on our website, or you can call us and get specific emails to either reach me or any of our other staff.
And the Nederland Food Pantry website is nederlandfoodpantry.org, and the pantry phone number is 720-418-0892 for any questions that you have. The Nederland Food Pantry email is netfoodpantry@gmail. We will answer.
Nederland Community Center, our phone number primary is 303-258-9721, and information can be accessed on the town website, which is nederlandco.org.
And the Peak to Peak Housing and Human Services Alliance also has a website. There is access to additional resources there.
On a serious note, for our last story today, we spoke about carbon monoxide poisoning and how to take precautions against it happening.
My name is Eric Abramson. I'm a volunteer captain on Nederland Fire Protection District. My main functions on the department are as the public information officer. I focus on the wildland side of things, but I have been with the department 23 years, so we've seen a lot of interior issues as well on houses.
Were you out there whenever a lot of that stuff was going on this summer?
I was. I spent quite a bit of time in California, and this was the first time in about 20 years where I happened to be away from home when there was a fairly substantial fire close by, being the Calwood fire. And so it's always hard when you're far away because you have all the information about what's going on, but your team is out there and you can't really support them. But as one person pointed out to me, there were quite a few Californians here to make up for me, and they're infinitely probably better at their job than I am. So I think we did all right, you know.
He gave us the breakdown of the science behind carbon monoxide poisoning.
Carbon monoxide is not carbon dioxide. That's the first thing I want to clarify for folks. The first thing I would just do is if you really want to get in depth about carbon monoxide and what it does and how it affects you, the CDC has a great FAQ available to you, cdc.gov. That's a great place to go to check out just further in depth. With this recent tragedy in one of our neighboring departments, it was just horrible to hear that a young couple succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. We've sort of decided we need to remind our folks about the dangers of that. And so carbon monoxide is an odorless gas. It's a very tricky gas because what it does to the human is to get oxygen around inside your body, you have this stuff called hemoglobin, and it floats around in your bloodstream. And what it does is it grabs those little oxygen molecules coming through your lungs, and it carries it all over your body. It's how your fingertips get oxygen. It's how your brain gets oxygen, right? It's like the transport system. Well, carbon monoxide binds really easily. It jumps on the train and packs the train car, basically, and none of the oxygen can get into your body. And so if you're exposed to this gas and you breathe a lot of it, it's going to really affect the ability of your body to deliver oxygen. And so that can have really dire consequences, and it can lead to death. It can also lead to serious brain damage, and just in the short term, it affects your behavior. You have a headache, you're not feeling right, you're not making good decisions. And so those are some of the symptoms that you might experience if you were getting it. And so to take a step back, where does this gas come from, right? Everybody wants to know where it comes from. It's a process of combustion. When things burn, they create carbon monoxide. So if you think about the things that are burning in your house, your wood stove is one of them. A boiler with a flame can be one. A stove that you cook on. A water heater. These are all things that are in all of our houses in various forms. A lot of them have flames that could produce carbon monoxide.
And here's the best way to prevent the invisible gas from filling your home undetected.
So the main thing is that most of these things, if they're put in properly, are vented. The vents can get blocked. That's something we've seen up here with the weather. These are the sources of carbon monoxide. And so what it does is, if your house is filled with carbon monoxide, you may not realize it at first because it doesn't smell like your propane does, but you start having a headache and you start feeling weird. That might be the time to figure out what's going on. Well, what we really recommend is a pretty affordable solution, and that's carbon monoxide detectors, which I guess we can go on and talk about. Yeah, that's pretty much the summary of it. I mean, like I said, there is lots of information, and if you really want to geek out, which a lot of people do, and I encourage people to do that, like get as smart as you can about it, because sometimes just having the knowledge is what can save you in any situation. It's great. There's a solution for this invisible gas, and that's the carbon monoxide detector. And I don't have current prices in front of me. That's something you may be able to look up yourself. But you can go down to Costco, Target, any of your retailers. You can probably get it online as you're listening to this and order one or two for your house. We kind of recommend, and you can follow the manufacturer's directions, that they're generally on every level of your house, but they also like them in every bedroom, because that's where you really want to hear at night is when you're going to notice. No, you're not going to notice things are weird, right? And so you want to get woken up. And so carbon monoxide detectors are pretty reliable. They now have long-time batteries that last, I think, some of them are 10-year life now that they'll operate in your house without touching them. You do want to touch them. Once a year when you check your smoke detectors, you should also check your carbon monoxide alarms. And what they're going to basically do is when the carbon monoxide level gets to a point where it could be harmful, they're going to go off, just sort of like a smoke detector. Now, you can also get units that are both. So just look for something that says very plainly on it, carbon monoxide detector. And obviously I suggest the major brands, but I'm not loyal to any of them. You'll find Costco always has 2-packs, and the various retailers have different options. Like I said, online too. You don't have to be fancy, but get a major brand, and I think you'll be good, and then your family's safe.
Well, hey, and that's number one throughout all this.
I mean, that's what this is about. The gas isn't going to hurt your house really as long as you vent it off. A couple other things I did want to hit home, though. If you're having alarms go off, we get a call from the 911 dispatchers that someone's alarm's going off, and everybody's feeling okay and they're out of the house. And that's great. And so a couple things that you can help us with is your inclination might be on the way out to open a bunch of windows and doors. I would encourage you just to get out of the house because, number one, you need to get out of the house and not screw around if it is really, truly a problem in the house. But it also gives us a chance to figure out where the source is. If you vent the entire house in 10 minutes when all the trucks arrive, we can't figure out where it is. And so generally we can suss it out because there's only so many things in your house that are potentially sources. If people are feeling bad, again, just call and get out of there. Get into fresh air. That's the main thing you can do. Often people, sometimes if they're intoxicated, say they'll pass out, so they're not as sensitive to their surroundings or they're not paying attention. A person that has severe carbon monoxide can be brought down to a hyperbaric chamber, and you can kind of force the gas off the train, so to speak, to use that analogy I was using earlier about the commuter train. So that's the severity of it. If you can get flown, you will get flown to Swedish Medical in a helicopter, which can be very expensive, and health insurance covers some of that. It's worth spending $50 on some detectors for your house is really the bottom line. Go and get some detectors. Like, do it today. If you're listening to this on your computer and you can't get down to Boulder, or you can't get to Ace Hardware store to buy one in town locally, get online and buy one and get it put up and put it up properly. And like I said, the other thing is to check them once in a while. When we change the clocks, it's generally when I check my detectors in my house, or urge you guys to do it too. This isn't just something that can affect an old person or young. It can be anybody in the house. Look, we had lost 2 very healthy firefighters, and that's really a tragedy that could have been avoided. If you have other questions about installation, you can always call the fire department. Someone might be able to help you answer your question. But the instructions that come with these kits are pretty straightforward. They're pretty simple technology. Nothing fancy, no wiring. They're all just self-contained.
Thank you, Eric. We really appreciate your time and concern for the community.
You know, one other potential source that needs to be said is that using improper stuff inside it. You don't want to have a campfire in your living room, right? You don't want to have a big industrial heater that's supposed to be in a vented area inside a tight space. Anything like that, you know, running a car in a garage. A car creates quite a bit of carbon monoxide. That can be fatal. Just be smart about any time you're using any kind of combustion, any kind of flame. What's that creating? Now, can a candle create carbon monoxide? It actually does. Not very much, though. If you do need to use some sort of industrial system in a house for some reason, maybe you just make sure you're venting. But generally, you don't want to be burning or doing things that are going to create a lot of inefficient combustion is a big part of it. That's the one piece I wanted to add about sources. 99% of the time you get a carbon monoxide alarm in a house, it's a dryer vent that's blocked. It's a stove vent that isn't working properly. Maybe there's a pilot light out. There's a few ways you can trigger it. But like I said, know where your shutoffs are. Know where all your appliances are, how to get to your dryer and your water heater, and those are really good things to do in case you do need to call us. Guide us to those places and we can figure it out.
The Mountaineer newspaper is hosting the Shape Your Paper survey. Visit the Mountaineer on Facebook or at the mtnear.com to submit your feedback about how you get the paper across the peak to peak.
And that's all for this episode of the Mountaineer Podcast.
Pick up this week's edition of the Mountaineer in print and go online to www.themtnear.com to catch up on more local news. I'm Art DeVitalis.
And I'm Cynthia Davis. Until next time, thank you for listening.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local peak-to-peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.